Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sunday Social. I hope everyone's okay. Thank you for everyone in the comments so far. Well, we've got a full house today, so I might as well introduce you to everyone. We've got Jason from Watch Rolling, my co-host.
Hello.
We've got Nicholas from Fears.
Hi there.
We've got Todd from TikTok Talk, or the Iron Sheik.
That's right.
We've got Seiko Todd with us, and we've got Pete from the formerly Not So Obvious Watches, but now Pete McConville Watch YouTube channel. Well, should we do a wrist watch check? I nearly said witch. It's like a Halloween thing.
Halloween special.
The Halloween special. Well, hopefully there's nobody who's got a horrible, horrific watch. Pete, do you want to kick us off, since you're in the kind of bottom
okay.
corner?
Okay. Yeah, so I have today a Rolex Air King.
Ooh,
nice.
So if I cover, I've been told if I cover my face, it might focus. But no. There you go. So yeah, Rolex Air King today. So yeah, I got the call, was bitten by the bug, everything's changed, and I'm now on the Rolex train.
Oh, you are so anti-Rolex, sir.
None of that is true, by the way. A friend of mine has lent it to me for a couple of weeks to do a review because Rolex gets a huge bunch of clicks. So it's not mine at all.
Oh dear, that was a roller coaster of emotions there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I feel.
I feel like I need to take a shower.
I feel violated somehow.
Yeah.
It was actually, that watch is actually what inspired me to suggest this idea that we're going to be talking about, one of the topics today. What watches make you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll get back to that then. Seiko Todd, do you want to? What are you wearing?
Well, what I'm wearing is my 2-day-old Hoyer calculator.
Oh, so good.
So cool.
Caliber 12.
That's amazing.
Man,
Running-
that's like Tom Selleck.
Yeah.
Sexy.
And what's cool, this is weird though. Speaking, we talk about like divers extensions rather. Look at this. It's a racing chronograph with a diver's extension on the original Hero bracelet. So I mean, it may just be, in case it gets heavy. You're not putting this over a driving suit, I don't think. Maybe you are. Maybe that's for like a driver's suit extension. Now that I think about it,
because it's quite a big extension, right? Like that's adding almost an inch.
Yeah, it's like from there. Yeah, it's it's from there. This fits under there. So yeah, it's about an inch. Yeah. It's weird. So it's entirely original. It's been rebuilt. So bought it from Japan. They always treat their watches very well in Japan, and so they just redid it, and it's keeping marvelous time. So I'm very psyched.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a great story, that Caliber 12 as well, isn't it? That was where multiple watch companies worked together, didn't they?
Yeah,
Hamilton
Hamilton
Project 99.
Right. Project 99. They were going against the secret Pogue, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay. Well, Todd, what are you wearing?
So always Jason's talking about the Tudor Royale or the Tudor Royal, and I keep telling people they're missing out on the Tudor style. Now this looks way more like a Datejust to me than the Royal, actually, and it is actually the first Tudor in my collection, and I absolutely love this watch.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. What size is that?
Well, it's the 41, but it's become so hard to find. I wish I could get it in a 38, but I haven't been able to locate one. So I'm living with this 41. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
Nicholas,
still love the Tudor Royale, though. Sorry.
Oh, man.
No. Nicholas, you're up next. What are you wearing?
So I've just realized, because I actually came from the office this evening, and I'm wearing a prototype which I can't show you. So
Nice.
No.
Nice.
So I just literally looked at it. I was like,
Wait.
nope,
Wait.
I can't show
Christopher Ward?
We won't look. Go ahead and show it.
that. No.
Give you false for that.
So I think I have a little more of an update on the Christopher Ward collaboration, because lots of people last time I was on were asking about that. So I can give you a little more info of that at some point during the show.
Oh, well, let's not wait.
Okay, so we're actually tomorrow having a meeting, Mike and I, to basically put a stake in the ground and confirm the the date it's going to launch. We're probably looking at the end of January. So yeah, not long to go. Not long to go. So yeah, but I'm not wearing it, so don't worry. I'm wearing a prototype for something different. But yeah,
I'll be watching for that
so,
watch closely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I have to say at the moment the pre-production watch has been at the studio being photographed, and like as the photographer was shooting, he just keeps messaging me going like, "This watch is amazing," which is lovely. But I'm also really worried because I'm like, we're not making that many of them. Like this is of course the way this always works. You make it something limited, and then of course it turns out to be the best watch you've ever made. But yeah, so hopefully next time I'm on, I should actually have a date and might have some more information. So
Awesome.
Can't wait.
Sorry, Jason, I cut you off there. What are you wearing?
I was just answering questions in the chat, but I'm wearing my Sunday special.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Zodiac Zulu Oscar 9209.
Such a cool watch.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Thank
I saw a vintage quartz tag, like the tag Submariner that was that two-tone, and it looked awesome. They actually had it in a local jewelry store, but he knew nothing about it. It didn't work, and then he said he wanted $1,000 for it. I'm like, no, it's okay. Anyway, I won't go full screen, but I wore my Rolex, which is one of only 2 watches out of my wearing collection that I have left. So everything else went, but I love it. So I love it a lot. So there you go.
Great
and
choice.
It also a good, and also a good visual for one of the topics. So the topics for today, what we're going to do is Jason's going to do a quick watch crime appeal. And then we're going to talk about Wally Schirra's Omega Speedmaster, which is coming up for auction, which I think the news kind of flew under the radar. We talked about it a bit on the podcast, but we definitely want to delve into it a little bit more because it's a very important Speedmaster. And then we're going to talk about that special feeling you get from watches, and does it matter whether you get that feeling with a watch or not? Does it change your view on it? So we want lots of interaction with the people. We want a lot of interaction with people in the comments section. There you go. I got it out. Jason, do you want to kick us off on this next the first point here?
Yeah, if you want to pull the picture up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm pretty sure everybody knows, or Britt Pierce now, formerly Watch Gringa, and her husband went and picked her up beautiful timepieces, FP Journe Elegante. That's the right way to say it, quartz. And this is a serial number. We're showing it here, and somebody stole it from him. Just to paraphrase it and keep it as simple as possible. I think he said he was in Paris when he got it, and he had it for a little while, and someone lifted it from him. So this is an actual picture of the actual timepiece that was lifted in the serial number right there. So we're just trying to get the word out the best we can for everybody. So maybe we make this timepiece so hot that nobody wants to buy it, illegally. And there it is. The picture will be on the screen. You can go back and look at it later, but that's pretty much it. And then next Tuesday, when we have our Tuesday night live stream, I'm going to just discuss some basic security kind of measures, like not to be all like fatalistic or anything, but just some stuff that a person can do in their everyday life to kind of help themselves out when they're out and about and stuff, and to protect themselves. Like, not that everything's perfect, because it can never be, but just stuff to help. Yeah,
it's a great point. And this actually got pickpocketed, didn't it? He didn't actually get in a confrontation for it, which I suppose that's one not grateful thing, but at least it wasn't an attack or it wasn't a mugging. It was actually a pickpocketed. And I think big cities are well known for that. We went to Venice and we got warned that was was an issue there. And if anybody does have any information about this watch, you don't need to message us. You can just message Brit at Watch Gringa. This is what her Instagram looks like. If anybody doesn't follow her already, you should follow it because it's really cool on Instagram as well. But you can reach out there. You can DM her on Instagram, and if you have any trouble, then obviously get hold of Jason or I.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, well, just wanted to heighten awareness. There's a lot of other YouTubers that are bringing awareness to it as well, because it would be great to see that watch come back, because it is quite a unique one. It's not just like one that might go into the ether. It is quite a special one. There's not that many on Chrono 24, for example.
Yeah. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's talk about, and Patrick's not on, who's a bit of a a bit of a naysayer on the old Speedmaster, but I wanted to talk about Wally Schirra's Speedmaster that's coming up for sale and get the panel's opinion on this. So if anybody's not familiar, Wally Schirra was a very famous astronaut. He actually went on 3 of the space missions. He was one of the first people in space, and Omega basically had a gala where they gave away these gold Speedmasters to astronauts, and I think politicians, Nixon I think famously got one, but it was to commemorate the Apollo 11. One of these has come up for sale before. So Michael Collins, who was the astronaut that stayed behind when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong did their moonwalk, his sold, and it sold for 765,000. But because this has got more, because arguably Wally Schirra is more expensive, they think this could go for more than the most expensive Omega which ever sold, which was 3.4 million. And that 3.4 million one was a rare Speedmaster. It didn't have any sort of history of ownership to it. But yeah, I wanted to get everyone's view on Omega's going to auction now, similar to how Rolexes went to auction, things like that. Has anybody got an opinion on this?
I suppose I'll jump in. I think that there's a real issue. There's not an issue. One of the things which is becoming more of a thing in watch collecting is provenance, that is, watches owned by very specific people. And I think maybe where we might get to a point where it becomes less about the watch and more about who owned it and what story you can tell about it. It's going to be an interesting test over the next sort of while. You know, if like a tussle between, say, Rolex, Omega, FP Journe or whoever, might become less about, you know, how good the watch was and how much people love the watch, and more about how much people love the owner of that watch.
Yeah, because this wasn't to your point, this wasn't a one-off. There was something they gave away 28 of them. This one is specially engraved, but there's 1,014 that were made, so it wasn't like this was a one-off. I mean, it's a piece unique because it's got Wally Schirra's engraving on the back, but the actual watch itself, if it was just about the watch, you could probably source one for. And they reissued this watch as well recently.
But the thing about these, though, too, is that, like, I don't know, and I may be too close to the subject just emotionally and mentally, because the guys that got these watches, much like the Newman Daytona, they were this, because I'm going to go all different tangents here. People who still think that we didn't land on the moon and who will deny all of that. These guys, the reason we were successful then is they put everything on the line. They were willing to take all of the risks. And this guy is truly just sitting on top of a bomb, a hero, saying, like, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this, and we're going to explore space. These watches are very special, especially ones that were worn by the astronauts that did this, at least to me, because you go, wow, there's a person who put their whole life at risk to just explore the great unknown, and to have his watch. That's just awesome to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know a huge amount about Omegas and Speedmaster, and I know a little bit about Neil Armstrong, but that's it. But actually, I just saw a comment that is something that I was going to bring up on this from Terry, and it's about the watch. This watch hasn't been anywhere or done anything, and I think, like, I get what you were saying, Pete, about like the provenance. That's really, really important. But with this, you know, this wasn't the watch that he wore, which was his personal watch when he went up before it got certified. So it's not that watch. This was a watch which was gifted to him. Yes, it's special. And there is the photograph of him wearing it where he looks incredibly cool with the sunglasses and that amazing polo shirt. I mean, wow, the guy was stylish. Look at him. That is, and the trousers.
It's a great photo, that, yeah.
I just love that whole look. But the thing is, you want to know, like, yeah, if he was gifted this watch and then it became like, he loved it and he wore it every single day, and it was something that, you know, really became associated with him, then you're like, okay, that's really interesting. But if it's something that got, brought out occasionally, there's sort of a thing of going, well, actually, if I was wanting to buy the watch because of the association with him, I would rather just buy whatever was the watch he actually wore every day. I know there was a auction recently which had Picasso's watch, and it was a really obscure, like non kind of department store Swiss brand that someone had customized it by painting the letters which spelt out Picasso on the dial. And this watch was basically not worth anything. Horological value was 0. Mm-hmm. But the value and the reason it did so well at auction was because it was the actual watch that Picasso wore every day while painting. And, so with me, it's kind of going, yeah, this is special and it's engraved and all that. But like, it is the gift. Like it's the gift, the commemorative watch.
Yeah. Well, I will say, sorry. Todd,
I was going to say to that end, you're right. And apparently he was photographed and on television numerous times wearing this watch. Like this became his watch. It was the watch that these guys wore these watches like they were like we wear watches. Once they got it, it was like, oh, cool. This is my watch. I'm going to wear this now. So he was known for wearing this watch on a regular basis.
Yeah, and also they weren't allowed to. I mean, this was one of the problems, wasn't it? That one of the Speedmasters, Neil Armstrong's. It was Neil Armstrong's that went missing, but the US government owned the Speedmasters that went into space. They weren't owned by the astronauts. They had to send them back. They had to return everything when they came back from these space flights. So they never had the opportunity to keep those Speedmasters. It was only if they took their own watch up that they got to keep it, but the actual Speedmasters were technically government property.
That happens with everything, actually. At least at NASA, like we as a video guy there, even when we are buying new equipment and we use it, when we're done with it, it has to be accessed and auctioned off. It's owned by the government. So the same thing would be with all of this property. Yeah, the watches as well.
Unless it was like some of them may have been sold, because you do see, like I have a British military, I think it's an Royal Air Force version of not the RAN, of the Seiko Type 2 chronograph, and it has the broad arrow on the back. It was military issue. At some point, they probably excessed that. To your point, the Brits probably sold it at auction at some point, or who knows? Some guy may have just kept it because it wasn't a very expensive watch. But I want to go back though to your comment though, to Todd, in that what was all the hype about the Paul Newman Rolex? I mean, it was provenance,
right?
And,
exactly.
And it went for what, 14.3 million, I believe.
Yeah.
So you're right. I agree completely. It's like what Pete was talking about. It's about the provenance, and whose belly button wore that watch. I think is a big deal, independent of whether it went into space or 20,000 leagues under the sea or something like that.
Arguably, more people knew about Paul Newman too than Wally Schirra. But
real quick, Wally Schirra is a combat veteran, Korean War, Naval Academy grad. And an astronaut, so he's the only guy that flew on Mercury, Apollo, and Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so here's
Gemini
the thing, if you were some naval aviator, and you were like super stoked about the space program and stuff, or you just had a reverence for this person who went and did these huge things, and so there's going to be a market to buy this thing. That's my thing. It's just a little bit of, and it's not like real history, but I think it's like long term, like just personal history that you get to carry around with you. So I think there's something for everybody, and almost everybody can line themselves up to something if they really want to. That's all I'm saying.
Unlike the Mars watch, this is a beautiful watch.
Yeah.
Just to say it.
Well, yeah, and also actually what we noticed is the Mars watch and this share a similar hue of red for their bezel.
Oh, yeah.
Or I mean, this is a tachymeter and it's a bezel on the other one, but yeah,
Yep.
So it was ahead of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's an interesting question. If you were Omega, would it be worth dropping $20 million at the auction yourself to buy it?
Well, isn't there a rumor that they do? I heard, well, this is total speculation, allegedly, supposedly, not trying to get sued, but I heard that Omega actually buy for the archives at auction. I don't know how true that is, but it's certainly a rumor that's been going around for a few years.
I thought it was actually something that they've flat out said they do, that they buy watches for their museum. It's buying watches for your museum. I don't think it's particularly controversial. Bidding against yourself to bump up the price and get a record, I think that would be controversial. And that's
yeah.
And so it would be interesting to see, would it be a while? But Swatch have no idea how to sell a watch anyway. So if it came down to marketing, they probably wouldn't know what to do.
Speculation, purely.
I'll show this too, by the way, speaking of space stuff. So this is, I don't know if you can read it. This is from a space auction I got. This is William Pogue's actual notes that he wrote while he was in the U.S. Air Force Academy for when he was teaching one of his classes. How you like that?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
very cool.
Yeah, and so I have a bit of Pogue's writing right here. So if you need to remember your matrix manipulation, there you go.
I was going to say, is he transposing a matrix there?
Yeah, he's solving the matrix. Yeah, he's doing the determinant of the matrix. There you go.
That's awesome.
So I mean, but could you imagine some very well-heeled collector, space, geek, independent of Omega, if they were to actually try to buy back the watch? I mean, that could go pretty high.
Well,
Great comment from Mark Wheeler there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What says the market for Wally Schirra watches will be passionate, but much smaller than that for Paul Newman. Sad but true. I think that's true, because one of the examples, I bought a Walbrook skin diver, which is a recreation of a French company that was called Douglas in the US and Walbrook everywhere else. And Neil Armstrong actually had a Walbrook skin diver that went to auction, and it went for a couple of $100. Now they can't prove that he wore it for his brother sold it, and his brother speculated that he wore this when he was because he was a test pilot before he was an astronaut, and I think afterwards as well. And so he actually wore this watch. It had like his skin, he had all the grime still on it when they sold it. And it only went for a couple of $100, and that was the watch he actually wore. Whereas his moon space watch he actually only wore for that mission. He didn't, and obviously the training beforehand, but he didn't get to keep that afterwards.
I'm more interested in Walbrook Diver now. I've seen those; they're pretty cool.
They are really cool. I was actually a Kickstarter, a backer of the Walbrook Skin Diver, and it's actually a great story. They're a great watch as well. The one that I had. The Kickstarter ones, they put that Miyota 8000 series in it, it was like a jet engine going off the rotor, but now they've gone to a slightly better movement. They also do a quartz version. In fact, their quartz version interestingly uses a mecha quartz 3-hand movement, so the second hand ticks like a mechanical watch.
That's the one that fascinates me. That's the one I was like, oh, I think I want to buy that watch.
Yeah, I mean the battery only lasts a month, but it's worth it. For that.
That's no good.
Yeah, that's a lie. No, I think it's like 2 or 3 years the battery lasts.
Okay, all right.
I would have kept. I bought both to do a review, and I probably would have kept the Mecha Quartz if it had the date on it. But anyway, that's
like you and the date.
I know. I can't live without the date. Yeah, that's my two things. I have to have the date on a watch, and one day there will be a Fears dive watch. I've got the money to one side.
One day. I've got I'm completely not related to watches, but I have a very random story from my mother about Neil Armstrong. So in the 70s, after he'd finished with NASA, he was doing a job for the US government that was it basically was the US equivalent of what my grandfather did in the UK, because he was chief scientist of the RAF. And when Neil Armstrong was over in the UK visiting, and they were having a conference about something, got to the evening, and my grandfather was put in charge of entertaining him. It was like, where would you like to go? We can go out in London, we can go for dinner. And he said, oh, all I just want like a quiet, low-key, like home-cooked meal. He was like, okay, fine. So he brought Neil Armstrong home for dinner. And so my granny, like on the fly, had to like prepare a meal. And so he spent the evening like with my mum and her parents, and had a charming meal. And then did this piece of paper because my mum was asking him where he was from, so from the Midwest, and she didn't really know where that was. So on the back of an envelope, he drew out like the US and like drew out the States and showed where it was. And she's got that framed at home because he then signed it.
Oh.
Like basically it was
Nice.
when Neil Armstrong came home for a family dinner in the 70s, which was quite random. I of course was then asking her when she told me this only a few years ago. I was like, well, what watch was he wearing? Was he wearing the gold, Speedmaster? And she was like, why on earth would I know what watch he was wearing? That wouldn't be of any interest. It's like, no, of course it wouldn't, Mum. Of course it wouldn't.
Wow, fancy
That's
having
awesome.
we were doing a watch discussion where we've got 2 handwritten artifacts from astronauts.
And
Amazing.
at
My
that
one's
time,
up
they
on
were like
the
rock
Instagram.
stars. That would be like having royalty to the house.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh,
unbelievable.
yeah. But it turns out he was, by all accounts, according to my mum, a very lovely, charming, quite chilled out guy. Like he wasn't, very unassuming. But I think it's on my personal Instagram. For the moon landing anniversary, I posted a photograph of it. So if anyone wants to go and have a look at it,
I'm going to have to take a
Find
look at
on that.
myself. I'm going to go
yeah,
steal that picture, screenshot it.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Pete, you were going to dive in there.
Yeah.
Before.
Oh no, it's gone. Oh, all I was going to say is that Nicholas could really, really troll you, Sam, by producing a fierce dive watch without a date.
Yes. I would take it as a personal insult.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Pete, I mean, if you've got the floor, our next subject actually came from you, didn't it? That special feeling, and
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, so it was a little bit of lead-in because there was a couple of things all happening at once when sort of you were asking what to talk about. I was listening to you, Sam, on your recent podcast, and you were talking about Evan at You're Terrific having done the review of the Datejust and how you didn't kind of vibe with his review of it. He was calling it boring. You were saying that no, it's an icon and it didn't really work. And what struck me was, I think what separated the two views of that watch is, and in your discussion you spoke about how there were things in there you were talking about. You never thought you were going to get one. You were really happy when you got one. It really meant something to you. And that's when I started thinking, when a watch becomes special in some way, what is it? And it becomes really disconcerting when other people don't see anything special in your watch. So you see something special in a Rolex, it inspires feelings in you. And when other people see it as nothing special, it's just a hunk of metal and it's actually not that interesting, ask a 6-year-old to draw a watch and it's a Datejust. Except they'd have more taste than to give it a Cyclops. Then it's really
so shady,
jarring.
So shady.
and that's where I was really coming from. How everyone we kind of watches that give us a special feeling are unusual and rare, and there's not a lot of them. And it's a bit weird when other people we feel it when other people don't feel it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was saying with the Rolex that I've got, it's a lovely watch, but it doesn't inspire any feelings in me. I have no. When John needs it back, I'll be very happy to give it back to him. So that's really where I came from.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject, isn't it? Because you're right about the Rolex the Datejust. Because I was thinking about this today about the subject. I was thinking it reminded me of when I used to work. I worked in a hotel, and then I worked for an Apple reseller. And back in the back when I was working there, people still paid cash for things. And I remember that at the time I was working at an Apple, I was selling Apple Macs, and the wage was ridiculous. I was on like £11,000 a year. I literally was like scraping by eating like pot noodles, which is a British thing, and that I had no money, but I was handling like tens of thousands of pounds worth of cash daily at the time because people were paying for computers. But I never equated the cash to, wow, this is a life-changing amount of money. This is like my annual wage I've got in my hand. Whereas when I used to review Rolexes, it was the same thing. Like I didn't own them, so I appreciated them, but I didn't love them. And yeah, I think the whole build up to buying it and saving for it and, you know, selling other watches because I did this whole thing. I did it on the channel where I didn't want to take the money from my wage. I either was YouTube revenue or selling other watches, or I tried to build it that way. So and I did that on purpose, so I would mentally tie myself to it a little bit more. Like I had to feel the pain of actually saving the money, and I think that worked. But yeah, actually owning it, I love it more than I think if I was just like yourself, if I was just borrowing that Air King. I don't know, has anybody else got a view on this?
Yeah, actually,
Go ahead.
Mine's Rolex related exactly, but it's so at the moment I've got a Rolex Submariner date two-tone with the black bezel and black dial, not the maxi case, so not the current one, the one before.
Yeah,
and it's not mine. It's currently on loan to me from the real Mr. X Sydney.
Nice.
And yeah, I saw him and he very kindly just was like, hey, wear this for a few months. And so I've been wearing it like on and off quite a lot. And I don't own the watch. I have no plans to own the watch. I'm not like saving up. It's not a Grail watch. Goodness, how wonderfully privileged does that sound? This gold Rolex is not a Grail watch, but you know, it's a nice watch. But you know, having worked at Rolex, I don't get that excited by Rolex. I tell you what, the first moment I put it on and was wearing it in my office, I was like, this feels really special. And then a few days later, I was going out for dinner with my husband, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to put it on. And I felt different wearing this watch. And I looked down and I was just like, I don't own this. This isn't mine. But this is really special. This watch makes me feel really special. And, you know, it's bigger, it's chunkier, it's flashier than anything I'd normally wear. But my goodness, did it really? And I messaged the real Mr. X Sydney and I said, hey, like this watch is really, it makes me feel special. And he immediately came back. And I mean, anyone who follows him on Instagram will know he has an incredible watch collection. But he was like, yeah, I only buy watches that make me feel special, like things that really, and I don't know whether it's because it was a two-tone sub and it's like, you know, it's kind of got that classic Rolex-ness to it. But for me, even though I don't own it and I have no plans to own it, yeah, I really felt the special, and it kind of was refreshing. It took me back to when I was in my early 20s and first sort of, you know, in a place buying watches, and even when I was a teenager, first trying watches on in shops, and that kind of butterfly in your tongue, you know, real excitement of like wearing it. And I was thinking, wow, at 35, I could still feel that with a borrowed watch, but I could.
As a sidebar, how do we all get to be friends with Mr. X? That's what I want to know. This guy's handing out watches just to have for months. I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, it doesn't happen with every watch that I've ever owned, but I think you get, you know, desensitized to it because I'd reviewed a lot of watches, but I definitely got that feeling with this. And also, bizarrely, I've had it with the Breitlings that I've owned as well. There's something about for me, I have to hold like a watch in my hand with the bracelet. Like if it feels nice in the hand, then for some reason that kind of mentally clicks with me. And I get that with Breitling because I think it's the way the case is balanced on a Rolex. Same with Breitling. Same with Seiko, like the Seiko Turtle. The way that case is balanced, it feels. And the other thing with the Seiko Turtle, the way the case is shaped and it warms on the wrist, because it kind of, the case warms with your body heat and it feels nice. I don't know, like Seiko Todd, do you get this? Because you have a vast collection, don't you? In all sorts of different things. Is there still stuff that, is it the thrill of the chase, or is there certain watches that you really like, you know, tied to that really feel special that you've got, or do they all feel special, I guess?
Well, yeah, like, you know, I'm a kind of a buy and hold guy. I'm kind of like Pete. I don't sell much, though I did sell a few things to get the Hoyer, including, I'm sorry, the Fortis. It went. Sorry, Jason.
You gotta do what you gotta do, buddy.
Yeah, do what you got to do.
This is America.
It's America. So yeah, like I have, like, to your point. So I brought some of mine down. I didn't know if we were doing show and tell or not.
Oh yeah.
But so this is my first 6139 speed timer. I got this done. This is a Spencer Klein watch, and it's a 6005, 6139 6005. So this is the same model Colonel Pogue wore on Skylab. It's just a later version. So again, how watches are. It's missing some of the text that would be at the 9 o'clock, which I do have that watch. It's called a True Pogue. I do have that watch, but this is the one that got it started for me. When I first saw these, and then Spencer said, "Yeah, I got one. I'll do it for you." It's just like, oh, it was magic. I mean, there's something about these. So I have about 27 of these in various forms. Some of the different dial combinations, different dates, different variants. And so, yeah, it's about the speed, it's about the chase, but it's also about the history. Like when I found out about how this was the first automatic in space, which we know now is also shared with another watch now. Just lost it. But yeah, it's to me, chronographs, especially because I think when you did the interview with me on Seiko chronographs with you and Sam, you and Chris,
yeah,
did that, right? And how what stuck with me as a race car guy, kind of being really into that and racing sports cars a little bit and stuff. And so you go running around the pits and the guys would have these, which gets back to, where is Patrick? It's a Speedmaster, Patrick. So when I first finally was able to get my Speedmaster, this is an 1861. It's the last year of the 1861s Hesselite. It's just like, wow. And then you can read on the back, it's the Moon Watch. And what this means in terms of the space race, because I'm a kind of a kid that grew up on the tail end of the space race. And it just means, everything like that has a purpose. And I can relate, watches to purposes and stuff like that. I mean, here's my Astronaut 1. This is a Bulova tuning fork, 1961. Astronaut 1. It stopped working all of a sudden because these things eat batteries like no tomorrow. But it's cool. It's cool. It's like a flying saucer. Really looks like a flying saucer, right?
That's amazing.
It's on the original Bulova bullet bracelet.
Nice.
And this one, this is what was issued to the X-35 pilots, the SR-71 pilots later on, the U-2 U-2 pilots. And this is what they wore. And so maybe this one's in really, really good shape. It's all original. Maybe this one was on the wrist of one of those guys. I mean, there's no way to know for sure, obviously, but the background of that type, that era, 60s, 70s, space race, Cold War, all the things that it was bringing, to me is just, I love that provenance. That's why right now I don't have any more micro brands. I didn't have a lot to begin with, but I kind of went through that stage and I said, they're great watches, a heck of a lot of bang for the money, but they just don't fill me with that. Like you were talking about, Nicholas, you put that watch on and you're like, ooh, this is something special. I put on a micro brand watch. I go, that's a really nice watch, but it doesn't have that provenance, doesn't have that history that I like, which is probably why I like vintage watches more than anything. But anyhow, that's my spiel, and I'll pass it on.
I think, so you guys have seen my stuff. I don't have a whole lot. And for Nicholas, we just met, but I have, I think probably the nicest, like it's like someone said earlier, price doesn't equate niceness, but in my Zen 105 UTC, I love that thing. That's probably the smallest next to my Zodiac, the 9209 I have, the gray one, the military edition one. But everything else I have, and there's some stuff I'm going to move, but my helm, I had Land Monster Seiko. I have a Samurai, the Blue Lagoon. And initially a lot of the case shapes that reminded me of ships, really like the dive aesthetic, and reminded me of ships from being in the Navy. Because, you can look at some ships, and some ships are all big and clunky. But like, U.S. destroyers, if you've never seen one, I just go look at one. Go look at a DDG. They're the most beautiful. I'll argue right now, the most beautiful ship classes ever made in the history of the world. And they're just beautiful. They're beautiful. And you guys made me think about something though right now. Like I had an epiphany in this discussion. So, in the military, you're always carrying something. You almost always have something on you other than just your uniform, right? You either got a radio or you got some other stuff or you're carrying some other stuff. You're always carrying stuff. You always got weight on you. And I have some heavy timepieces. And I think it's the fact that I know I have something there.
Yeah.
And it just dawned on me right now. It's like, it's weird. Like I'm not naked. I have a tool readily available. It's there. I feel it. Its presence. Maybe it's comforting in some way, because that was the biggest thing when I retired that I realized is like, I'm just wearing regular clothes. And then you realize like, you can't, like if you wear slacks, you can't put too much in your slack pockets because that fabric's not designed to hold a bunch of stuff in your pockets, So like my wallet got smaller. Like I have a minimalist wallet now. And like, I got rid of a keychain. I just have my key fob. And then I got a cool little leather thing from Carl Frederick that has my initials on it. And I can screw my keys in there.
I love Carl Frederick.
Oh yeah.
that's
Just,
beautiful.
yeah.
I
It's just
know that
blink,
one.
blink, right? It's awesome. And, so like, I think now that I pay attention, my watch is always there. It's something I can carry with me. And like I said, it's presence. And so maybe the design elements of seeing stuff, and then now feeling stuff, it just kind of dawned on me when you guys are talking about it, because I've discussed it before. Like I have my own provenance. Like this might sound a little arrogant, but I have my own provenance. I've earned my provenance. I've lived my life. I know what I've done. You know what I mean? So like if there was ever a person in my line of business that did what I did that was way more awesome than me, which is true, there are, and they sold a watch, and I'd line up to auction and buy that watch, because I never really wanted to go to space. I always just wanted to be a dude who went to sea, and that's what I kind of did. And as a little kid, I wanted to be a firefighter too, so I knocked both those out at the same time. So those were my kind of dreams. But
so you would say, you would say that G-Shock that you wore that time would be as special as any luxury watch you would buy.
I've looked at the pictures. Yeah, thanks.
There you go. This is for you.
Oh baby, it's Arleigh Burke, man.
Arleigh Burke, baby. Number one, right there.
But
we won't get flagged for adult content.
No, I hope not. But I looked at some of the old pictures with me with my old G-Shock, and it's the one with the 3 little the concentric dials inside of it.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and it hurts me when I'm like, man, I wish I had just known. Like, I don't even know where it went. And it's like, that thing, I had that thing for like 12 years. I changed the battery out myself, and I don't know what happened. I just don't have it anymore. And it'd be really cool to take, and I have another one that I had I got right after I retired, but it's not the same thing, and yeah, it would be special.
Yeah, because the G-Shock are doing that cool thing, aren't they? That restoration thing, which I think is a really cool, because I think that must be a nod to obviously all the service people and police and fire and everything that use G-Shocks actually in the field. I mean, is the story that about the watch from the manufacturer, does that emotionally tie to watch? I mean, Nicholas, arguably yours is the best in the industry. That's such a great story.
Agreed.
I don't know, Todd B, do you want to take this one? Does the story tie you to watch more?
There's 3 levels going back to everything that's been talked about. First of all, I'm kind of with Seiko Todd on micro brands. Like I get the inherent value and I get how great they are, but they don't have a history. They don't have a story. And so they're more, to me, and I don't want to be offensive to people, but it's more of like a fashion watch. I'm just buying it for a look, which I also have. But to have and so we've talked about this. I don't think that I'm ever going to be a Rolex guy, only because I'm a government worker and I only make so much money. But I have become a Tudor guy, and the Tudor story and the Tudor mythology that is tied to Rolex. Sorry, Pete. I have bought into, and on top of that, once I got it, because some people were like, "Well, this watch is just as good," but once you've actually felt it, and we've talked about it, Sam, and the quality of the bracelet, and that there's something to it where you're like, no, I do feel like there's something special, and I do like looking at it personally. I don't care if a person next to me notices it or makes a comment on it. I'm enjoying this watch. And so the story, I think, does sell something to me personally, because I don't think I maybe have had 2 people comment on a watch I've worn in all of my watch collecting. And it's really about my personal joy and experience with watches as opposed to external forces and how I am enjoying that watch. So the story is something that's ringing in my head, and kind of like what we were talking about before with that Seiko, or no, I'm sorry, that how did I just do that? the Speedmaster. My father has a 70s Speedmaster that he bought for like $140 when I was a kid, and I would sit on his lap and stare at that watch, and I love that watch. And it's just about that sort of connection for me personally that I look at it and be like, yeah, this is cool. I have a pocket watch that was my great grandfather's, and it's not even something special. It must weigh half a pound, but it stays on the shelf in my office, and I like to look at it and wind it up and listen to it tick every once in a while, because it's like, this is really important to me, and it's just for me personally. So I don't know if I've answered your question out, but like the special stories are good. But they're just good for me. I'm not really concerned what everybody else thinks.
I'm a firm believer, though, Todd, that it just comes down to how we rationalize things.
Yeah.
Like we can rationalize. Let's be honest. We're human beings, man. We're all fallible, right? We can rationalize anything. Like if I really wanted to tie myself to I don't know, pick a watch, the Casio World Timer. I don't know. You know what I mean? I could find a way to do that if I really want to, or maybe I'm just wacky.
True.
But like where you work though, how many hours have you invested? How much overtime have you invested? How many family events have you missed, or the amount of stress you've been under, deadlines you've met, blah, 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 for something that traditionally, and people can say it's marketing, but it's something bigger than us, like space travel. Like we always joke about this, but I'm serious. Like we should, as a race of people, aspire to do this, right?
Yep.
We should aspire to these great things, fully understanding like we can't all be the astronaut that's in that seat wearing that cool watch. Some of us are the people down below that are doing cool stuff to get that spaceship off the ground and get them
boots on the ground. But
yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, and so I think it's cool, and I think each story is different, and I think it's fine for you to find some way to find a story that speaks to you.
Yeah, totally.
Some companies are just better at telling them than other ones.
It is interesting how we all respond to things differently. Jason, I've got the original G-Shock that the Air Force issued to me, and it's bouncing around inside a box somewhere. For me, it's familiar, but it doesn't inspire anything special in me at all. It was just given me. I didn't, and I wore it because it was given to me, and it was cheap and it's easy, and created anything with it. Oh, am I breaking up? Am I? I never. So it's funny how I've got 50 something watches. All but one of them is special to me in some way. The only one that's not in any way, shape, or form special is my SKX. I own that purely for a collecting reason. It's the starting gun on my collection of Seiko divers. And so I like the divers. I don't like the SKX, but it's kind of just there as the, as I said, it marks the beginning of that collection. But everything else, I sort of was looking off to the side. I've got an IWC, which is the something that IWC did before, so I'll put that one back up. IWC did for the Royal Australian Air Force, only available to serving or former members. I've got the Dornbluth and Zona, where I half suspect if I took it apart, I would find some of the blood and skin of the Dornbluths, and it's like in there. I've got the JLC Master Compressor Diver, which it's special. It's a rock show of a watch. It's just huge and unwieldy, and just it's an event to put it on and wear it. Each one of them is special to me in some way, but they're all special in different ways. That's sort of what I allow myself to. Like I said, I've got 50 something watches. every single one of them is special to me and makes me feel like Nicholas was talking about with the Rolex. If I didn't feel that way, it gets sold. And so that's the 3 watches I've sold.
Yeah,
I have to say, Pete, what you say about like things being special. So yeah, this Rolex, which isn't mine, it's being lent, makes me feel special because I think it's Rolex, it's heavy, it's got gold, it's all of that. But actually, when I look at my own, I sadly don't have 50 watches, but when I look at my modest collection, the watches have different things. So I have a bespoke piece unique from Garrick Watch Company. And when I wear that watch, yeah, it's a beautiful watch, fine. Why do I love it? Why does it make me, when I put it on, why does it feel special? It's because when I look at that, I look at my friendship with one of my best friends, David Brailsford, the owner of Garrick Watches, and the fact that he made that watch for me. One of the watches I wear quite often, and I always wear it every day, every launch day when Fears launches a new watch, is the Redcliffe #1, which I bought from the company, and it was the very first watch that Fears made after the relaunch. That watch is not, it's not the most, exciting one necessarily that we've made over the last 6 years, but that watch is so special because of the sacrifice to get to that point. But, it can be that actually, yeah, the reason why it feels special is different for every single watch. And actually, I've been reading a few of the comments about story and, whether heritage is just marketing. I think the word heritage sounds like it's marketing. I think history is true, but heritage is sort of how it's packaged. But for me, I'm a strong believer of like, when I look at what we do at Fears, yeah, we've got this wonderful history, and that's great and that's wonderful. But as I'm always saying to my team, that is literally the cherry on top. That can't be the cake. Like the cake has to be how something is actually made. How, fundamentally, if you give the watch to someone who doesn't know anything about the company, they should still go, "Ooh, this feels nice." You want that, like the average person on the streets. Like you just give it to someone who knows nothing about, goes, "Oh, I like it. Oh, it's got a nice way. Oh, like that feels nice." And like you were saying, Sam, about like holding the watch with the bracelet, like in your hand, like at that point, there are all these little things where it's like it is subjective. It's up to each of us to know what that is. But there are certain little things that just make you go, "Ooh, this is nice." And for me, I think that's really important. And then the story is there, but like I've always tried to make sure in the last 6 years, the story isn't like, that's not the cake. It's just the cherry.
Well, I don't know if you still do this. Maybe you can comment on it. But I know at one time for people, the Fierce collectors, you would even go as far as people could commission you to make custom dials, couldn't they, to really sort of bond themselves to the. I mean, is that still something that you do? Because that's taking it to the next level, isn't it? Like people that already appreciate Fierce, but they want something so special that they perhaps is only one, hue of this certain color on the dial that one watch was ever made, or just a handful.
Yeah, no, we still do the Fears custom. We don't promote it. There's nothing on the website about it. It's our sort of semi-secret division. But yeah, we every month we take on commissions, and it's not just changing a dial color. We're in the process of building some completely one-off, unique watches. As you can imagine, it can be quite expensive, but people have come to us saying we want a completely different watch or a different movement. And if you're willing to wait, a year, 2 years, we can do it. But what makes something special to me, I think it's, and I think this goes with what you were saying, Pete. Like, I look at the half dozen or so watches in my collection. Each one is different from the other, but each one makes feels special to me for a different reason.
Yeah, and there's some great comments. A lot of people are sort of alluding, sort of commenting that price doesn't necessarily mean that a watch is special. I think it can be a factor. Like I think it can be a factor, but yeah, I mean, one of the special watches I have in my collection is an old mechanical Timex that my grandfather always used to keep in his front pocket. So I always have that memory tied to it. And that's, I mean, you go on eBay, you can pick them up for like $40, but it's certainly not. Right. I think price is a factor for when it relates to something. I don't know how to say this, but sometimes I think price is a factor for me. Like the Rolex brand having a Rolex makes me feel special. The brand, I think, as well, is part of it, I would say. But yeah, other watches, especially in my collection, that are arguably worthless to other people.
It's a measure of personal accomplishment. That's another reason people do these things. You know, like I said, like I got this because now I'm at a point in my life where I can now afford it, which it also makes it special. It doesn't mean that expensive is what it's about, but it's like this is special to me because of that.
Some milestone.
Milestone. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that makes us human is that we tell stories. And if we're not telling stories and we're not making stories part of our life, well, then, well, there are wards full of people like that. But most of us that are out in the world functioning, live and breathe by stories. And brands and heritage and all this stuff we're talking about, they're all just stories. And no one is more valid than another. If you resonate with the story of the Rolex watch brand or the Tudor watch brand, that's great. There's nothing wrong with you. One of the things that really gets me annoyed is people that get on some intellectual high horse and say, I won't listen to what other people tell me. I don't listen to brands marketing. And I just think, who do you think you're impressing? I mean, that's... And when people say, I just care about the facts, that's all I care about, it's like, that's kind of sad. That's how empty that life or that world must be. I love the stories.
Numbers,
yeah. I was proud of my oldest son. He decided to go down this path to become a fireman. And he said, when I finally got this job, when I get this job, I'm going to get a watch. And he went out and bought himself the Tudor Black Bay in the navy blue. And this is the marker of the moment I became a fireman. And I was like, that's an awesome thing. Now you have this story going forward.
Right. I'm going to show my Seiko. This is the one that started it all for me. This is the 7A series chronographs. These were the first quartz analog chronographs ever made. And this one I got when I was in university. I shouldn't have bought it. Couldn't afford it. I bought it brand new in 1984. And this was also the one that was in my house fire. And this is the Seiko Royal Oak. That's another name for it. There's a Genta heritage to this. Seiko likes Seiko collectors like to put it out. There's a Genta heritage to it. But this is the one that was found. I found in the ashes of my bedroom after the house burned down. And it was and if you go on, and Sam knows about this, if you go on the Spencer Klein's Seiko, the Seiko Restorer, if you go on his website and look up the Fire Watch, you can see a whole special he did on bringing this back to life and what it looked like. It was like this burnt crusted thing with a missing pusher and had stopped, of course, and he brought it back to life. And these quartz mechanisms are some of the best ever made, period. And this keeps a couple seconds, maybe a month. It's from 1984. It's really remarkable engineering. But this means so much to me. Now you can go buy these all day at $400 in decent shape. Seiko made a bunch of them. But it means like all this to me, right? All this heritage. I was wearing this watch when I flipped my 67 Camaro, going a little too fast around a corner, and it's still, so all this is, with me in this one watch. All the stories are in this one watch, like a genie in a bottle. And, will I ever part with this? No. I mean, why would I? This has got so much of my history, and I hope to maybe pass this down at some point, say this is the background of this watch, and maybe, one of my sons will, go for it.
I'm weird where I like the watches that I keep are watches that, I've inherited because they've got a story associated with it. If like my Speedmaster, I got married in it, but I still sold it. Like maybe I don't value my own experiences with the watch as highly as perhaps I should do. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll change. But I mean, any last words on this? There's just absolutely fantastic comments. Sorry we couldn't get to anyone.
Yeah, there were some really good ones.
Yeah, there's some. We tried to show. Is there any that you saw, Todd, particularly?
I'm trying to go back here.
Jeremy had
Oh, one.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I think discovering a unique watch that precious few people even know about is far more special than going to the mall to get a watch from the same brand.
Yeah.
Of at least 15 of my relatives own.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think it's important to remember too, though, like how many of your relatives are really like into watches, right? They're going to the mall for the same reason. Like I go to the supermarket to get deli meat. I'm not trying to hunt a pig, season the meat and do all the stuff to it, and just so I can have a sandwich. You know what I mean? I think there's a balance there.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of people saying, Rolex is a milestone brand and things like that. I mean, but I would argue that Invicta does more of a job of selling a dream than than Rolex does. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like it really
they
is
do.
like, yeah, if you're
a dream
like,
or a fantasy.
yeah, if it's oh dear, probably
I'll put that up there for them.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
Todd.
So, thanks everyone. There's just been some great comments. Sorry, we couldn't get to all of them.
I answered a bunch in text typing.
No, I really appreciate it. Any final words before we wrap it up? Been great having everyone on the panel.
Oh no. I got nothing.
No,
Awesome.
I found a Rolex though.
Nice.
Yeah, isn't this nice?
Celebrate this moment.
Yeah, this is unique to me.
That's right.
Yes, I mean my Moo logo might be similar. Anyway, very, very much appreciated, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you to my panel, and we'll see you on Tuesday for another Casual Watch Talk Live. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Night.
Bye.